Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals. I'm Randall Carlisle and my co-host Rachel Santizo.
Good morning.
Good to have you here. This is one of the most watched and listened to podcasts dealing with addiction and recovery anywhere. And we have thousands and thousands of people watching and listening. So if you're one of them, we thank you very much. And if you'd like to just hit subscribe, no matter how you got into seeing us or listening to us, then you'd be notified every time we publish a podcast. And we've done over, this would be 111, this will be our 112th podcast. Can you believe that?
Wow. That's awesome.
That's a lot.
Yeah. That's way awesome.
So,
I know.
so
I like
you invited our guest today. Would you like to introduce him?
I would. So this is Lial Gingell. And I actually had the pleasure of meeting him. We would meet every Saturday.
Gingell.
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 Yes.
Okay.
Did I say it right?
No,
or wrong?
you said it right.
Oh,
I was
good,
wrong.
because I wasn't
I even
sure.
got it wrong. I don't even know anymore.
Do you know who you are?
I do now.
Okay.
I'll remind you. I'll remind you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I had the luxury of meeting him a while ago at FTR, Fit to Recover, and we would just work out, and him and his wife would show up, and he just has this presence about him, and I didn't even realize he was going to school, and he said that he wanted to do an internship, and the universe works in the best of ways, and he ended up applying at Odyssey House, and now he works at my facility, Meadowbrook, and so without further ado, this is Lial.
Hello, world.
Tell us about your, I guess maybe start with your background, your past.
Oh, wow. So this is like...
You're in recovery, right?
Yes, I am. I'll have 4 years on April 18th.
Yay.
Yes.
And it took... I don't know. It's been a lifetime because I've been going back kind of how... we look at clients having to do their autobiographies
Right,
and everything.
right.
And ever since Rachel invited me last week, I've been kind of doing my own mental autobiography
Okay.
and digging through everything. And it's brought up a lot of stuff, and it's kind of been triggering, which is also like really good because it helps with my recovery further, because we keep thinking that like we're in a good place with our recovery sometimes,
Right.
and then something gets uncovered.
Yeah.
And it's good to come back to that and focus on it to do the work.
That's a good way of looking at it. You make
Yeah.
me feel better because Rachel and I both are working on 10 years now.
Yeah.
But still,
Yes.
I have thoughts that I need to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So go ahead.
I still work in restaurants, so I'm triggered all the time. So
Yeah, restaurants are I used to buy cocaine from somebody in a restaurant.
Okay.
And the one time I wanted to try ecstasy, they said, "Well, try this person in a restaurant."
Oh, absolutely.
So
yeah, you want it, you can find it. Especially since I'm up on Park City and Main Street. You know.
Ooh.
A Park City restaurant. We're not trying to
Everything.
indict anybody in Park City restaurants, but
Right.
drugs are easily available.
The term is it snows all year round. That's part of why I left Park City so many years ago, because I am... Oh, let's see. Last time I did cocaine was 10 years ago. So that and alcohol were my drugs of choice. And so 10 years, no cocaine. And next month will be 4 years, no alcohol, which has
Good for you.
been my hardest struggle. I started out, my map of scars, I call it.
Ooh, I like
I
that.
like
Was,
that. Map
I
of scars.
I was 5 years old, and my dad had a 12-pack of Natural Light in the fridge. And my very LDS grandma came over and saw this 12-pack of beer and absolutely freaked out. Wrote off my dad for a long time. And he told her, well, don't worry, it's fake beer. So my little mind, I'm like, oh, fake beer. Awesome. I'm
drinking
going to
it.
try this. So I grabbed that 12-pack and I ride it over to my friend's house down the street in the trailer park we were growing up in, and decided to drink quite a few of them. And
Of
I
the
was-
fake beer.
Yeah.
Did you
no,
get
it was-
fake drunk?
It was very real. It was a very real drunk, too. And on my right knee here, it's my very first one, this little tiny scar, was when I was drunk and crashed my bike at the ripe old age of 5. And that is where my career of use started. So I used, I started breaking into like grandpa's liquor cabinet and stuff because he always had alcohol. My grandpa was a huge alcoholic. And so started off with that. And then we were at our babysitter's house. I was about 7 then.
Wow.
And we were pretending to smoke because she was a chain smoker. She smoked Pall Mall filterless while she was hooked up to oxygen. Ballsy woman, I'll tell you much, because I know
hardcore people there.
Right.
Yeah, and so we were pretending to smoke, and she's like, "You little bastards want to smoke? I'll make you never want to smoke again."
Oh, yeah.
Gets out a carton of Pall Mall filterless, makes us smoke the whole thing. We all get sick. Next day, we're stealing cigarettes from the local gas station.
Wow.
And that continued for years.
And that was at 7?
That was at
So
7.
you start drinking at 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you keep drinking after that?
Yes, not like all the time, but it was like, oh, okay, well, mom and dad are having a party and they don't notice beers are
Right,
missing,
right.
and my parents would always have big parties and we always got into things. It was a huge culture of enabling while I was growing up.
Wow.
And my first arrest came at 8 years old when I was caught at the old Dan's. I was on 13th East and 8600 South. I got caught stealing a pack of Dorals. Oh my God, wow. And this is what's crazy is the longer you maintain abstinence from drugs, like memories can
Right.
come back and then you can focus on it. It's so
Yeah.
weird. In my schooling, it talks about the neuroplasticity and certain percentage of it can grow back. So that just blew my mind that I remembered even what kind of cigarettes they were from over 30 years ago.
When they arrested you at age 8, did they
Yeah.
cuff you? Or did they-
No, they did not cuff me, but they did have me up in the office. I was terrified.
How bad?
Yeah, and everything. And so, yeah, that's when my plethora of charges began because I've been in and out of trouble my whole life. And it's all been centered around high-risk behavior due to some sort of mind-altering substance.
Sure.
So your parents, they would have parties and stuff, but doesn't mean they were alcoholics, right?
No, my parents.
Were
yeah.
they alcoholics?
My dad, I don't think. No, I'd say my dad. Yeah, both my parents are.
So it was a family affair.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it's been that way, on my dad's side. They were the very LDS. Never saw any of them used except for one uncle, but he always seemed to have it in control.
Yeah.
My dad was co-operator of the world's first Kentucky Fried Chicken for most of my life. And so he,
On State Street.
right across from where we are right now at Meadowbrook, so brings
that's
back
so
a lot of
interesting.
memories. Yeah.
Wow.
So what happened as you grew up then? You said you had a whole bunch of problems, but I mean, you went to high school and...
Well, I dropped out of high school several times, but I continued using. Another memory is when we went to Yellowstone in Jackson Hole, and my parents had a bunch of friends with us. We were in the back of the truck going from our campsite to Yellowstone. They had a bunch of Mickey's, Big Mouse, and Country Club.
Mickey's malt liquor.
Oh, yeah.
Randall's
Because,
yeah.
being a good old alcoholic,
Yeah.
we drank that and Country Club and,
Oh, yeah.
and
High
was-
Point.
Yeah, because it had more alcohol than
Yeah.
regular beer.
And I really never cared until, I just wanted to get as messed up as I possibly
Right.
could. I'm trying to watch my language as the best as possible, so I apologize to those listening. I'm still working on my filter. It's taken 40 years, and it just comes out sometimes. So I'm...
You're okay. You are okay.
But I just remember getting all hammered in the back of the truck at I think I was 8 at this point, and my parents had to pull over the truck because I was acting up really hard in the back, and I remember going to the front seat, throwing up all over them, and then not remembering anything else until the next day. So that was my first blackout, and that started.
And you were how old?
I was
8.
7 or 8 then.
A blackout at 7 or 8.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
I thought I started young at 13 or 14, but boy,
Yeah.
you're a veteran.
At 13 or 14. Oh man.
Right.
Yeah.
And life kept progressing. I kept experimenting with alcohols that I could find, beach schnapps, whatever. I remember my first guitar teacher, he took me to go see Megadeth and Suicidal Tendencies at 9, and they were passing around a bottle of pre-mixed Sex on the Beach in the back seat of that car. And I got to have some of that, go to that concert. I remember just raiding the parents' liquor cabinet and everything, and going on and on until I tried marijuana at 12 when I was in my first band. And trying marijuana, then getting more into alcohol, developing that rock and roll lifestyle. First suicide attempt was around 11 years old.
What was it for? When
For
you
that?
were 11, yeah, the suicide attempt, what made you want to?
I grew up in even though my parents didn't get divorced until I was like 17, lots of abuse, and my dad worked a lot, and lots of addiction around. And I know my mom knows a lot about my suicide attempts because I was always very open about them, but I don't think she knows about this one. And
Yeah.
so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
which is fine, and I don't mind. I'm very open about everything. And she ends up listening to this. Yeah.
Mom,
Surprise.
Mom, this is a spoiler alert, so just tune out for a second
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
And so this was trying to cut my wrist, and I didn't do it right, obviously. And I was doing it with a butter knife, and I just kept trying, and it didn't work. But that's where I developed my self-harm.
Okay. Yeah.
I did some cutting, but I didn't really do a lot of cutting. I still have a lot of burns and some scars from some of my cuttings, but I would hit myself. And
I think it's important because we're around this really young age, and we don't talk about this enough in schools, right? And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that
But it's
we
getting a lot of
should-
publicity right now with like 11 and 12-year-olds
Right.
dying by suicide.
Oh, yeah.
And- yeah.
And I think for so long, like mental health and addiction has just been this taboo. Sweep it under the rug. We don't want the neighbors to
Yeah,
find
we don't
out.
talk about it.
Yeah.
It's
We don't
not
talk about it.
happening.
We don't want anyone to know about it. But you know what is so goddamn important is talking about it.
Exactly.
Because if we don't talk about it, if we are not open and communicating, then we're just gonna look at where the world is, and it's all because of lack of communication and lack of understanding. Because when we're not open, we're not able to understand, and that's one of the most important things, is being able to understand where someone's coming from. Because you never know what kind of struggle someone has.
Right.
You never know if this little 11, 12, 13-year-old kid, what the hell they're going through, because the world is so focused now on what TikTok's doing, how you have to look, how you have to act, and the world's always had that, especially growing up. I got to grow up watching MTV, all the beginnings of that idolization to where it is now. And it's so stressful for young people at this point because there's just so much pressure on them to be this perfect TikTok model. They all have to do that. And it's just how do we have conversations now instead of being open and honest? We're let's just see how wild and far we can push this,
Right. And then we get someone courageous like you, and that's why I was asking, because you're willing to share your story and be courageous. So the world is listening to hear that I was 11 and I attempted suicide.
Yeah, and you said understanding's a key. And I'm, when I read these stories about an 11 or 12-year-old
Yeah.
dying by suicide, I'm trying to understand what's going on in that person's mind
Right.
and how it could be prevented. I mean, what was going on in your mind, saying at that age, saying I don't want to live anymore?
Trauma. Lots of
Yeah.
abuse, a lot of pressure. I was already, heavily using alcohol and everything,
Yeah.
and dealing with really strong depression, everything at such a young age. Depression happens a lot in my family, and so it hit, and I was already self-medicating with that, and self-destructive behaviors and self-harm, and I just felt natural. A lot of times, that's when I started developing the idea that the world would be better without me.
Ooh.
And I lived with that, I still live with that. And I still do that work every day to know that, like, I deserve good shit. And I can help someone deserve that, find that they deserve that, because yeah, I have a hard time with that still, but I know how to recognize it, and I've developed really good coping skills through the last 4 years to realize that, because I feel like a lot of my substance abuse and using was a way to try to find a way to, like, either die or face it. And now I know how to face it, and it's really, really amazing, because I never thought I was deserving of it.
Are you deserving of it now?
Yeah. And I have found purpose. And it's taken so long. Like, I remember, like, because I've been playing guitar since I was 6, and I kept thinking that was my purpose, and I was going to be this huge rock star. Like, that was, like, all my purpose. That was, like, my whole outlet growing up. And I developed this. I ended up being in some bands. We, like, got really close, it seemed, but I think every local band, even though we went on, like, a couple small tours, played, like, a couple shows out of state, we were like, oh, we're gonna make it, yeah. But maybe
Can I have your autograph, please?
Absolutely. But then addiction took that to my alcoholism, as well as other members and their drugs of choice, which death metal, that kind of goes hand in hand. And now I'm realizing there's a lot of sober death metal bands, and that's really inspiring to me too. So it helps out a lot, and they have really good messages. Heaven shall burn, put that out there. So yeah, I've had to learn coping mechanisms. I have tried to get rid of substances, like, throughout my whole life. I've had people, like, recognizing my substance abuse throughout my whole life. An ex-girlfriend, everything. When I was, like, my first girlfriend, and she realized what I was doing and tried helping me, but I just decided it was like, oh, whatever, I'm going to go and get high with my brothers and friends instead.
It's not a problem. I just want to do it.
Yeah, like, throughout my teenage years, it was always alcohol, marijuana, and hallucinogens. And we would do some wild stuff. It was fun, but it was also like, wow, how are we alive?
Yeah. I mean, you start at such a young age, so you're rock and roll, you're partying, you have this whole dream that you're just going to rock and roll and party. What changed for you? How did you get out of that lifestyle? I mean, it started so young that it's almost unimaginable.
Well, man, so many, like, arrests and court stuff and just lying and everything, because I found that when I was, like, in active use, like, I had no problem being a compulsive liar. It was totally fine. Sure. I totally justified it, and kind of gave me this way of, like, trying to tell stories, and I would tell some friggin' doozies, and like, I'm allergic to peanuts, and just, like, I'll die. It's like, why am I doing that? Or this just stupid stuff. It was like, I just felt like my life wasn't good enough, so I had to develop this character to make it feel like I was so much more than I really was, instead of, like, trying to find and embrace myself. So what happened is, going through bands, going through different, like, just heavy use, everything like that, surrounding people that were toxic and enablers, and then, God, I met one, and she... met her when I was leaving Park City. It's how I found cocaine, and she introduced me to it. We ended up dating for like a year and living together, and just, like, lots of cocaine, lots of partying, and lots of just weirdness. And that brought more self-doubt, more trauma to my table, and That lasted for like, almost a decade. And even after I met my wife and got married and everything, like this one still had her claws in me. And it was just so crazy how like we can be so codependent even on like
Oh, yeah.
people that are so toxic for us. But we just have this feeling like, no, they're like my sister. They're my best friend. Like,
Yeah.
but we can't. We've got the blinders on because we're just like, oh, we need to keep focusing on this, and in turn, it's just more toxic and more enabling. And that happened this was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when that toxicity finally got out of my life. But then I kept partying. Well, I wouldn't even say it was partying. It was just like, I've been general managing restaurants in Park City for the last 6 years now, and just the stress, the expectations, everything, being told if you prove yourself, then you can have this, and then you prove yourself and you're still not getting this. But we'll dangle that carrot, and we keep getting that in our heads, like this is okay to be treated like that, like it's okay for someone to not really respect us because we're not respecting ourselves. So we'll just keep chasing that carrot, even though it's not ever going to come and grasp. And so I had that happening, kept having that happening. And I was selling weed on the side too, just, because my alcohol habit was $600, $700 a week.
Wow.
Wow, that's incredible.
Going to the bars,
Yeah, sure.
buying everything. And so to help finance that, I was selling some weed too. And of course, when you're at the bar, you're absolutely out of your mind. You're going to be loud and talking to the wrong people. About 4 years ago, I'm driving home from the restaurant I was managing, and I get a call from my wife, don't go home, we're being raided. And so I'm like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Like, just all of a sudden, like, everything's crashing down, like, everything was already, like, pretty much broken anyways, because that's how we do when we're heavily using. We don't have a good foundation. What we have is, like, creaky boards, and then all of a sudden, everything's crashing down. We're being raided. And so I'm like, what the hell's going on? Finally got all clear that the cops were gone, that I'm going to have to talk to them, turn myself in, everything like that. So I'm just like, what the hell's going on? So go home, assess the damage, everything. And the next day, have to go talk to my boss, let him know about what happened. And the next day was my day off, and that's when I was going to turn myself in. So I turned myself in to the Wasatch County Sheriff's, and I'm laying there in jail, like, am I getting out this time? Because every other time, like, the longest stint in jail I ever spent was like 24 hours. And while I'm laying there, I'm like, am I getting out this time? Like, what's going to happen? And
That's a heavy question, too.
yeah, when you're laying there and it's 3 a.m. and you can't sleep because, you're withdrawing, even though, like, it was only like a day, but I drank so much that like I was getting the tremors, everything, like all dangerous. The time. And so I'm laying there, I'm withdrawing, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm like, if I get out of here, I'm going to do whatever the hell it takes to never do this again. Because I would like have so many instances where it's like I would do something stupid, DUI, or like in jail, or fall and whack my head on something and be like, okay, I'm going to stop.
I'm going to do it this time.
And I'd go like 3 months and I'd be like, awesome, I've got this under control. You know what? I can have just a drink and I'll be totally fine. And then I would have just a drink and it would turn into 47 and I'd wake up in jail the next day wondering what the hell happened. And it just happened all the time. And I would be like, oh, I've got this under control. Or I'd be like, I'm in a restaurant. It's a job requirement to know what the alcohol tastes like. And that's bullshit. It is not.
Right.
Like, so I'm laying there and I made a pact with myself. I had just gotten done with this cognitive behavioral therapy treatment that I was required to do because of another arrest. I had just gotten done with it. And the next week, I'm in jail because getting raided. And the whole time I was in that CBT training, I was like, I'm just going to bullshit my way through this, and I'll just go right back to using. And then I'm in jail. And so all this stuff that I learned at Expansive Horizons, it was an outpatient up in Heber, all came flooding to me. And I was like, okay, if I get out of here, I'm going to do whatever I can do. And I all kept coming back to alcohol. It's me, I'm the problem. The alcohol is the problem. And I'm going to do whatever it takes so that I am not the problem and the other outside problem isn't going to be there.
Lial, I think that we're almost out of time, so I would love for you to tell the world where you're at today. Who are you and where are you today?
Where I am at today, after all of this, being general managers of restaurants. The restaurant shut down for 3 months. During that time, I went from 70 hours a week to nothing. I started cooking, started doing so much mindfulness training. I run 5 miles a day now.
Wow.
I have lost over 100 pounds.
You weighed 100 pounds more than you do now?
Yeah. I cook.
He's a really good cook.
Clean. I'm going to go home and make vegan bolognese.
He said he's going to bring me a vegan bowl. That's all I heard.
Yeah. So bolognese, it's one of my favorite dishes to make. It's a traditional Italian meat sauce. But
I was going to say,
vegan.
that sort of doesn't make sense because bolognese means meat sauce.
Yeah, I'm going to make it with Beyond
Oh, okay.
and some mushrooms.
Okay.
Yeah.
And during this time, I started working with my wife's cousin who works at a facility up in Wasatch County at Aqua. My wife was in rehab at the time, and I got so inspired. And the restaurants reopened, and I went from spending time with my family again, being in touch with myself, falling in love with myself, which is really weird. And I was like, how do I give back to this community? And Sharon hooked me up with the SUD-C program at Utah Valley University. I am in the last semester of my SUD-C classes right now.
Yay.
I've never been to college. I'll have my associate's degree after the summer course, but I'll have all my SUD-C stuff done middle of May. And I am devoted to myself and helping others find their voice. And you'll never fully overcome the addiction, but at least finding the coping mechanisms that will help you live day to day and see all of this shit and realize that you can face it. That no matter how hard it is, you can face it. It takes practice.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot. The other day, someone asked, what's the success rate of this program, right? And it got me thinking, and how I answered was, the success rate of this program is what you make it. If you come in here, do all the work, learn everything, leave here, continue doing all the work, keep doing that process, keep following through with everything that you're working on, you have a much greater chance of succeeding in your program. But if you come in here, just fuck around the program and leave here, you're going to have a 0% chance of success.
Right. No matter what program. It doesn't
No matter
matter
what program,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
if you come in and you don't come out of here still doing the work, because it is like having 2 full-time jobs in your head.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
you are having to
good
do that work. You're having to have the coping mechanisms there. What I do, I have Fit to Recover. I used to go way more. Now,
Yeah.
I'm Thursday mornings in boot camp. That's about
Yeah.
what I can do. But I'm in school full-time, work full-time, and everything. I have that. I have so much sober support found it in Rachel. I found it in other people in the FTR community. The Sober Punks group on Facebook. They're based out of the UK, and it's just a bunch of other weird, goofy, like
So cool.
people that are sober, and like some people it's one day, some people it's multiple years, and we just boost each other up. And
That is so cool.
yeah, so it's finding your supports and doing the work. It doesn't have to be AA. It doesn't have to be rational recovery. It doesn't have to be any other. It doesn't have to be anyone else's program, because it's your program. And what I do is multiple different aspects of multiple different things.
Yeah.
Heavily on the smart recovery, rational recovery is how I do a lot of my work. But like, you can take little aspects of every little thing and turn it into your program and work it. And one of my favorite things that I hear is, it works if you work it.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
Very true.
That's the way we closed all our groups when I
Yeah.
was in IOP. Yeah.
It works if you work it.
Yeah.
You find your program, you work it, you do the work, and it is the most worthwhile thing. Like, fall in love with yourself. Those of you that are struggling, that's one of the things like that. We may not ever feel we can do it, but it is so worthwhile. If you can find the ways to do it, fall in love with yourself. Because that's the only person. People come and go, family comes and go. You are the only one there in your life always. So find a way to do that. Find your program.
You're a real inspiration.
Yeah.
You've inspired me. I'll stay sober another day.
Absolutely.
See?
With that, I'll take 24.
There you go.
Yeah.
Lyle, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm glad you introduced Lyle to our audience and to me. Thank you. It's been
Yeah.
a
You're
pleasure.
welcome. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you guys. Check out the podcast. You know what? Treat others like you want to be treated, and be nice to yourself and be nice to those around you, because you never know what anyone else is going through, and it doesn't hurt to smile.
Let's all smile. Amen. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for watching another edition of Odyssey House Journals.